Hello and welcome to the first episode of World This Week for this season here on France 24's Worldview. I'm Jean-Emile Jameen and I'll be joined by a cast of journalists to reflect on the past 7 days which have captured global headlines. Here on set, we have the omnipresent and omniscient international affairs editor for France 24, our commentator Douglas Herbert. Also sat next to me is Turkish-American journalist Aysigul Sert, affiliate professor at the Sciences Po School of Journalism, an expert on Middle East affairs and US foreign policy, having reported from Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and the Syrian border. She's also fluent in 3 languages. Welcome, Aysigul.
God, I'm never going to leave here. It's wonderful. Welcome.
We've also got on my right Ana Navarro Pedro adding her voice to the show, a friend of the world this week, a correspondent for the Portuguese weekly Visão. She's trained as an economist. She has written hundreds of articles covering all areas of European culture news, and she has a few things to say on the French situation this week. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And coming to us from Kyiv, we have Peter Dickinson, publisher for Business Ukraine magazine, having worked at the Kyiv Post, the Odessa Review, and Lviv Today. He's here to provide his reaction and reflection on what's been a deeply troubling 7 days in Ukraine. Thanks for joining us, Peter Dickinson. Let's begin, though, in Gaza, because the United Nations has this week, for the first time, declared a state of famine, and the organization says it's engineered and it's man-made. Over 500,000 people are said to be facing starvation, with hunger-related deaths now topping 300. The World Food Programme is managing just 100 trucks a day compared to the 600 needed. The United Nations Hunger Report has been dismissed by Israel as biased, while rights experts accuse Israel of enforced disappearances at aid sites, and hundreds of UN staff have urged their chief to call the war a genocide. As Israel prepares an offensive on Gaza City, with dozens killed near food distribution points. We've just seen there those journalists killed at Nasser Hospital as well. That footage, a stark reminder of what has happened in this past week in August. Let's go straight away to Aysigul Sert. Some shocking images that we've seen right now in the Gaza Strip. And the United Nations, let's just start off with the humanitarian situation, because they've changed their stance. And they now say that famine is happening in the Gaza Strip. So if it is that flexible, do we envisage a case now where they can say that genocide will actually be taking place? And then what kind of responsibility do we have as reporters to follow that line?
It's been damaging on many fronts what's been happening for the past 2 years in Gaza, not only in terms of our own humanity, in terms of international politics, in terms of words and concepts that we teach to young generations, like sovereignty and solidarity. It's been for me from day one, what has happened, it was indeed a terrorist attack. I'm thinking of October 7th, of course. But what has been happening ever since is not Israel becoming a more secure place, but it's actually doing what it has itself has gone through, which is, I think, genocide. Some people say that it will be up to the historians to decide what's happening. I think until then, it's up to the journalists to bring the facts and what's going on the ground. The problem is that we are not allowed as international reporters to go on the ground. And the images that you've actually show our colleagues being killed. What happened at that hospital a few days ago, pardon my emotion, is not only us as reporters seeing other reporters being killed while they were trying to show on site what's going on. It's actually also a war tactique that Israel has been doing, which is first they bomb and then they bomb again, which means that the people who were on site in order to report or to bring help to the ones who were wounded actually lose their lives. Then the last thing, and of course I'll leave my colleagues to add on, is the word famine. The word famine has been going around for months and months. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, there has been not Israeli information, but Israeli propaganda about what's been going on site, each time calling collateral damage when there were people trying to not starve and get some food. And that even those who worked for the United Nations or other ONG have been labeled as terrorists.
And as you speak, this is something that you retweeted yourself from another journalist who ripped up their Reuters card. I can't in good conscience continue to work for Reuters given their betrayal of journalists in Gaza. And it just speaks to the dangers of journalists that's facing them there, and something else that you want to reflect on.
Journalism, whether it's in a war zone or in an authoritarian regime or even in a democracy, has never been a very easy job to do. It's whether the moment that you put a mirror to a society and say, hey, this is what you're becoming, you're already targeted as a danger, but that's no problem because that's why we're here, to do the job. The thing which is very hard is that more than 200 journalists have been killed in these 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that it keeps going on without any changes. A press card is something that is very hard to get, and in order to, it's kind of like a passport when you're someone from far away, and that you get it, it gives you, in a way, wings to go from place to place. A press card gives you a responsibility to do your job, and the moment that a journalist rips off a press card, is saying, is kind of like taking off the Legion of Honor that he or she has been carrying it. And that's why I retweeted it, because it demands courage, but it shows also the heartbreak that these journalists are feeling today, which is, of course, incomparable compared to what those in Gaza are living every day.
And I think that message is coming across here to France. Ana Navarro-Pedro, do you think that there is a shift in mood here in the country, just given the events of the past week? Is there some kind of change, understanding that journalists themselves are the ones affected? They're the ones telling the story. We see everything that goes on in Gaza itself. How is France reacting?
Generally, I believe that the French public has been aware of what is going on in Gaza for a long time now, and there is a French people and there is the French government, and those are two different things. We've seen now a shift in Emmanuel Macron, the French president, saying that France might recognize Palestine as an independent state up in September. By the way, that would be at the United Nations General Assembly, and we've just heard that the United States has forbidden, has denied visas to Palestinian delegations, whether it is from Fatah, from OLP, or PLO, sorry.
Including Abbas, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. The President Abbas cannot go to New York.
The President Mahmoud Abbas cannot go.
Cannot go. So as you see, this brings us to so many people, so many observers, and we all can see it, that if we wanted this genocide stopping in Gaza, we could. It would take the United States just to stop delivering guns and really warning Israel not to do it, because Israel is totally dependent financially and militarily from the United States. But coming back to the French and to what is going on, yes, the French are extremely aware of what is going on in Gaza. They have their own problems here, as we'll see later on. There is maybe Emmanuel Macron is willing not to have a rupture with his public regarding the Palestinian question as well. But coming back to the journalists the journalist has ripped off his press card, I can understand, because I've been thinking all these days, as I've been thinking before when covering war in Bosnia, or in the Balkans, or before in Middle East, or wherever, that we do so many efforts, we risk our life, we try to bring what we see and what we can analyze from what we know, our inquiries, our reporting. And lately, before it could have an impact, and lately I find that we are not having an impact anymore. We are coming into a world where diplomacy, journalism, reporting, politics are being pushed aside by brutality.
And I think adding to this particular problem of journalists and their reporting out of Gaza is that because of the nature of the crisis and what you said in the beginning, that international journalists are not allowed into Gaza. They are barred from entering the territory. And unless you're a binational Palestinian or you're extremely wounded or sick, even getting out, you have to get authorization. It's extremely difficult. So it's essentially sealed, which means that the big news organizations, the Western news outlets have relied for their reporting on local reporters. The vast majority, if not almost all of them, reporting from there are Gazan natives with families, right? These are journalists, but they're also human beings with families going through the exact same series of difficulties and crises and hardships as the local population. And part of the problem here is they are journalists just as their colleagues in the West who are not able to enter Gaza are journalists, but on the propaganda level. I will use the word propaganda. Let's not mince words.
You mean they aren't doing propaganda?
No. What the Israeli army is trying to do is broad brush them, one large stroke, to try to portray many of them, not all, but many of them, especially the Al Jazeera reporters, as Hamas sympathizers. And by doing so, what they're essentially doing, groundless allegations that they're Gazan, they're living among the Palestinian population, their reporting is obviously tainted or somehow tainted by their sympathies, their alleged sympathies towards Hamas. They are essentially trying to neuter or neutralize the value of their reporting. So that's this is another major obstacle that they have to deal with, the fact that they are being essentially smeared by a very, very effective, powerful Israeli government PR operation, military spokesmen who are feeding a narrative. It's a narrative, a false narrative that you are getting your reporting from Hamas. These are not reporters worthy of their name. These are reporters who are basically feeding you Hamas sympathizers. They are biased.
And you saw that article there, 210 journalists killed in Gaza since October 7th, 2023. And now there is a mobilization effort which has been announced for the 1st of September by many of our affiliate colleagues, including Hidden Stories here in France.
Exactly.
So it really is taking hold in the media space. Peter Dickinson, when you see these reports in Ukraine, what does it make you feel about the free press in the country, given everything that's going on? Does it give you a heightened sense of urgency to maintain democratic values in the country, given the Russian impetus coming on to Ukraine right now?
Yes, absolutely. This has always been a civilizational clash in Ukraine. It's always been about Russia trying to expand its authoritarian reach, and the great provocation for the Russians has been Ukraine's attempt to build a democracy. Ukraine's democracy is imperfect, has always been imperfect. It's easy to pick fault with it, but essentially the country's trying to emerge as a functioning European democracy. We saw recently grassroots protests over attempts to curtail the powers of the country's anti-corruption institutions, for example, which was a good example of the democratic instincts in Ukraine. And this is what scares the Russians most. This is something that, from a Ukrainian point of view, has always been central to the war that's ongoing here. And it's always been very much Ukraine's goal, long term, to emerge from this as part of the European community and very much as a democratic country.
Thanks, Peter, for just outlining that fact. Of course, we will come back to Ukraine at large because there is so much to cover, but it does just emphasize those democratic principles and what it means to be a journalist in these countries. Now, one country which we are really watching over our shoulders is the United States. I mean, they are at the forefront of everything on our minds in terms of freedom of speech, the rule of law. It has become somewhat of a Wild West, as the US president has said to several people over the past few days, "You're fired, you're fired, you're fired." And that's just because they seem to be disagreeing with him. That's Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, Trump's very own hire, Public Health Director Susan Monares, are this week's big casualties as well. He's also gone on to dismiss Robert E. Primus, a Democratic member of the U.S. Surface Transportation Board, and he's just removed Kamala Harris's security protection. Trump's not done yet. He's also stamping his authority on the ground with with federal agents swamping Washington, D.C., with Chicago looking nervously over its shoulder. Douglas, we just see these people that Donald Trump has fired.
I could, by the way, add to this list, right? It's a long roster. You showed the top ticket, the big heads, the big personalities there. There's also literally dozens, I think about 200 officials from the Nuclear Safety Watchdog, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in the U.S., basically overseeing nuclear safety, right? You know, scientific people who have been either forced out or have had to leave, felt they've had to leave that safety watchdog since Donald Trump came to office in January. So on all levels, whether you're talking about the economic credibility of the United States, the monetary policy and its credibility, whether you're talking about the health policy, whether you're talking about the transport infrastructure, whether you're talking about nuclear safety in the U.S., they're being emasculated. These agencies are basically being stripped in ways big and small of their scientific knowledge, of their expertise, of seasoned veterans who in some cases have been in these posts as nonpartisan civil servants for years, if not decades, gone overnight or suspended or not really knowing what their fate is going to be. It's having a real credibility, and there's no other way of putting it. There's no other way of putting it than objectively we are seeing a weaponization. I know we overuse the word weaponization, but a weaponization of government power by a chief executive who sees himself as solely in control of the executive branch of the U.S. government.
I know when a European sees this, when a person from France sees this, what are they thinking in terms of this seizure of power?
Oh, the word dictatorship has come up in Europe in many academic circles, political circles, maybe not as as a public standing, but it regularly comes up. And Donald Trump this week, actually, he himself said on an interview, "I'm not a dictator. I'm not going to install a dictatorship," because that's also a key question for debate in the United States. But Europe as well, let's say, with Europe as well, it's going through a stage of European countries and Brussels, which means European institutions are going through a stage of, tightening the bolts, on freedom of speech, of journalism, investigation journalism, and so forth. So let's not throw the stone only at Donald Trump and the United States. But the thing is, right from the beginning, it's more than just having a strong power in the United States. It's about, indeed, putting the country in a position whereby opposition, opponents, will not be able to get into power. And that seems to be not only Donald Trump's mission and objective, it's the idea of the people around him, people like Peter Thiel, very, very demonic, let's say, boss of Palantir, which is an international artificial intelligence agency working with the CIA, very officially, not a secret.
Part of the PayPal mafia with Elon Musk.
I don't remember that sort of guru called philosopher from California who says that the United States democracy is an old idea. The United States should become an absolutist monarchy, and those people are around Trump, but mainly around the Vice President DJ Vance. And so this is something deeper than just the will of President Trump.
And it's not just those highs and fires, Doug. It's also, as we have mentioned, the federal guard coming in to places like Washington, D.C., Chicago looking over its shoulder. In fact, we have heard from Nadia Salazar Sandi, this is the organizer of the Migrant Families Collective. And this is in the event of everything that's happening, ICE raids, federal guards, as I say, just approaching people on the streets. Here's what she's had to say.
People are not picking up diapers. They're not picking up flour to make tortillas, right? Like, they are not going to their appointments for their cancer, for dialysis or whatever that is. Like, they are missing a life-saving appointments because they're terrified. They're not going to work. The only people that don't belong in the District of Columbia are the federal agencies that have been occupying our streets, manufacturing chaos, and bringing nothing but fear to our community.
As Gul said, you have many different backgrounds, and if you were in the United States right now, how would you be feeling watching everything that's unfolding?
I'll be living in fear, which is a word that just came. Look, I lived in the US for 15 years. In one of the cities I lived in is Los Angeles. And Los Angeles was one of the cities where Mr. Donald Trump did send his big task force which is actually illegal. According to the Constitution, it's the governor. So a governor who needs to ask for that help. There's in international relations, when long ago I was in school, we learned a word called fear-mongering. We see that fear-mongering is a word that comes back a lot today as well. Another word is abuse of power. Usually in authoritarian regimes, I wouldn't go as far as to define the United States as a dictatorship, but as a country that is becoming more and more authoritarian or has an authoritarian regime, the first thing they do is, of course, always try to find allegiance, which means that it's not, you have to show what Donald Trump is saying, allegiance not to the flag, but to me, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief.
And to the flag.
And to the, very true, but he puts even himself, I think, above that flag, or actually he's kind of like Le Roi Soleil, which means the incarnation of God and of the flag on earth. The other thing that he tries is to push all the institutions and all the that are, whether it's the press, whether it's the Federal Reserve, that are supposed to be independent, he wants them to show that allegiance. He wants them to bow to him. And the people that you mentioned around him, like J.D. Vance, are actually yes people. I don't think that Donald Trump listens to them a lot. It's usually when you're in that position and when you're with his "you're fired" kind of psyche, is that you become the one that around you just want yes men. So the moment that these people like the Federal Reserve, or actually what Harvard University did a couple of months ago, is saying, no, there's a rule of law, there are laws that you have to follow, and there's something called the Constitution. The last thing that I want to say is that this week, where it becomes almost you don't believe it, and then it happens, is that when he mentioned, Donald Trump, that he might actually call the Department of Defense the Department of War, which is something that since the Second World War in the United States, it's called the Department of Defense. It shows for him that he can try to do anything that he wants, and he keeps pushing the different layers.
And there's this really pretentious term. It's called the Overton window. And, I had to look it up too, right? What is it? It's this notion that the range of what is considered politically acceptable, it shifts over time or given the political climate. And it's amazing because all these things are happening so quickly. Every day, it's like authoritarian creep or mission creep in this presidency. The things that would have shocked you, a few weeks, a few months ago, all of a sudden start to seem normal. So we just saw those pictures on the screen of National Guard, weapons-toting, machine gun-toting National Guard on the street of the nation's capital with ICE agents around them, in some of the states as well. And you sort of say, yeah, that's pretty tough, but it almost you become a little numb to it. And then the more you see it, it starts to become sort of acceptable. And you say, well, he's the president, he has a right to do it. And you do have to clean up those crime-ridden cities. All these ideas all of a sudden begin to sort of sink in. You absorb them through like osmosis, and you start to think it's almost normal. And everyone's affected by it. It's almost like a virus here. And that's the thing that we are, in a sense, seeing right now. Donald Trump likes these displays of military. Remember, he took the idea, he stole Macron's Bastille Day parade idea, and he tried to do it. It was a flop, but he tried to march the military down the streets of Washington. They cracked all the pavements. It was horrible. It was nothing like the Champs-Élysées. But he likes these military displays. It works to his base. It makes him look tough. It makes it look like he's delivering on his message to clean up those dirty Democratic-run cities, rid them of their crime and their dirty immigrants, and get all the racaille, as they say it, the French with the scum off the streets. It works. It's effective politically for his base.
Peter Dickinson, I'm just curious if this news has reached Ukrainians and if they have reacted in some way. It appears that as I'm speaking, we have lost Peter. But I do imagine what the United States' allies are thinking just watching all of this unfold?
Yes, but it's Maggie Haberman from the New York Times, who's been actually who's a wonderful journalist, but following Donald Trump before even Donald Trump, presidency won for a long time. She talked exactly about this. It's about the moment that you start. She noticed that Donald Trump repeats things a lot. The reason why he repeats them a lot is exactly what you said. Is that with time, people who hear him say, I've already heard that before, which means that they start normalizing it. The other thing is that it's the moment you use the word propaganda for the topic right before. It's that it's almost like the facts do not matter anymore in his mouth and in his psyche. And it's all about, when you look actually at the United States in the past 3 years, it is safer in terms of a country that compared to 10 years ago, which means that there is no reason to send to Columbia University or to UCLA or to Chicago or to LA the task force that he wants to create this idea that the United States is in danger and we need to clean. The problem is that the people he's trying to clean up are the people who make America. America is a melting pot. Without all those immigrants, there will be no America. And that's the thing that he doesn't understand.
I wonder if that same issue is going to take hold of France. We do have a little bit of a movement coming up, Anna. If there is any kind of person that can grab power, it seems unlikely, though, at this stage, because, well, let's just face it, the French government is in a mess, and we've got the 8th of September to look forward to. It's almost as if the French government has announced its own downfall under Bayrou's administration, and it's not looking great for him or for Emmanuel Macron, all from this unpopular budget, and all the signs seem to point to this headache and even a call for Macron to resign.
Yes.
We have a headline in one of the publications here in France, and it translates directly to zero gravity. We will show just after that. That's not it. That's what the French want.
That's interesting, but I don't think...
The French want Emmanuel Macron to resign. Yeah. Here we go. Zero gravity. Are we in a state of zero gravity here in the country?
Yeah, that resounds like another saying coming from a philosopher, a sociologist, saying that the degré zéro, the zero degree of politics or of popularity in this case. French is in dire straits, of course, and for many people, the main problem is Emmanuel Macron himself, who's still sticking to power, holding to power, which is constitutionally his right. Totally, but maybe politically or in terms of legitimacy, it's maybe more questionable because he's seen as the person who has conducted France to the situation where it is right now, not as well disrespected in many foreign cynicals, and in a situation of tension inside the country, and his governments have added to the debt of the country to a point that is absolutely unpayable for many observers. So the question of the 8th of September is the fact that the Prime Minister that was appointed just some months ago, after a disaster, the second Prime Minister after a disaster dissolution of the Parliament just in June last year by Emmanuel Macron, well, he has seen that his attempts to redress the finance of the country are probably not going to be accepted by the Parliament later on in the year. So he decided to go it all, and say that, okay, now I ask you for your confidence vote on the 8th of September. If you don't give it to me, then I'm out. That comes at the time when there is this very weird appeal in France of everybody for the 10th of September for people to stop working, doing general strike, stop paying their taxes. That will never happen in France, neither in other country. There are a lot of strikes that's starting this weekend and going on until the 8th of September in France. And there is this situation of almost confrontation that has been called by some quarters, maybe more radical quarters, as a pre-Civil War climate. Now, Is this a very dramatic way of describing the situation in France? Yes, it is. I don't think that the French that have credits to pay off for their house, for their cars, the kids in school, and all the troubles of the daily life are really ready to go and take up arms and go on the street and, and do an armed upheaval. But it does show up the situation this country is in, the tensions and the deadlock that it will have only one issue, and that is my only thought, not anyone else. It's Emmanuel Macron should leave.
Well, there we go, and that seems to
Now we can bring
now
up
we
that
can bring out exactly. What a
Knew there
great
was a
way!
time for it, right?
Brilliant. So now let's turn back to that poll by BFM, which shows that the French, while they seem very split on many occasions, the idea that Emmanuel Macron should resign, well, that's top of the list, actually,
Yes.
in what they are united behind. So 67%, Doug.
I think, those figures are really interesting for what they're worth. Look at them, absorb them, have your debates over them. I think there's just one big elephant in the room that we're not talking about. And this is not to play devil's advocate and start taking the defense of the Prime Minister or of Macron. The Parliament. The French Parliament is a shambles right now. And one of the consequences of that dissolution last year, about 14 months ago now, right, was it resulted in a fragmented parliament. You could say, well, that's what, parliamentary democracy is about, right? A lot of vying parties. Italy had it for decades and the governments kept collapsing, right? That's the way government worked in a parliamentary democracy. The problem here is that everyone is shouting at each other, but they're not really listening. And there has been, it was a few months ago, everyone was talking about how France has this culture that is somehow unable to strike compromises. It's all about grievance. It's all about clashing, confrontation, antagonism. But when it comes to actually try to work together, they're not good at that. And now, it's almost these days, it's always been a thankless task to be Prime Minister of France. I've always wondered, who wants that job? You take all the hits, you do all the dirty work, and you end up going down in disgrace most of the time. Now, being Prime Minister is almost mission impossible. Yeah. Because what's going to happen? The next Prime Minister won't be able to go to Macron and say, Mr. President, I'll be able to deliver the votes for you on that budget that no one wants. Impossible. But they're divided. But Parliament cannot compromise, and there's far left, there's far right, there's everything in between. They don't speak to each other, they speak at each other. It's a yelling match. It's a gladiatorial yelling match. The Parliament is dysfunctional.
Absolutely split along those lines. Nonetheless, Bayrou does have someone he wants to blame. He was speaking to TF1 on a Thursday. Quite an interesting take on why the country's in the mess that it's in.
France's youngest people are the main victims. This will be in the history books. They are the victims. They will have to pay off the debt for their whole life. We managed to make them believe that we will still have to increase the debt. Isn't that incredible? All of that to suit some political parties and to suit the boomers, as we say, who think that everything is fine. I believe that lucidity is the first virtue of a nation and shows the willingness to cope with the problems.
Isaac will say, I will not go to the boomers present in terms of a reaction. I just want to get yours because from the younger generation in France, do you buy that?
No, but I love politics. I have issues with politicians, and I did watch that interview on LCI TF1, and it really made me not crumble. The thing is that the problems of France did not start with Emmanuel Macron 7 years ago. The problems that we have in schools, in terms of la retraite, the word in English doesn't come to me.
Retirement,
pension.
Yeah.
Thank you. In terms of hospitals, started. I was looking at archives from the 70s in French politics and debates. It's the same topics that we're talking about, le chômage, etc. The problem is that Bayrou actually is very smart. He found a great way where he thought, okay, the French want change, but the French don't like to change. So the thing is that he actually is doing Emmanuel Macron right now, 14 months later. He's doing almost like he's get away from it, his own dissolution from the government, where he says, I'm bringing to you exactly the plan that we ought to do. If you don't give me your confidence vote, I will just have to resign. It's actually his very comfortable way of saying, I'm out of this box. The last thing, I think the last person that we need to feel bad for in France is not the presidents or the prime ministers, because once they don't have that job anymore, they have great pensions coming on their way, and that they forget where they're coming from. So, in terms of compromises, the biggest critique I have towards Emmanuel Macron is that he has not been good in the art of compromise. He has, since day one, he has always been a very tough cookie with whoever was facing him. And the problem is that in France, if there's one thing I've learned in this beautiful country, is that you have to round the edges. And if the number one politician doesn't do that with the people, we have the situation that we'll be having on September 8th.
All about compromise. That leads us on to our final topic, and it's a pity that we have lost Peter Dickinson. We hope that everything is okay in Kyiv at the moment, because we want to just quickly talk about Ukraine and get everyone's perspective. This, of course, comes off the back of those strikes on Kyiv on Thursday night, which killed 23 people, including 4 children. Donald Trump says he's prepared to impose more sanctions on Moscow if Vladimir Putin doesn't agree to a ceasefire. Kyiv, though, is seeking solutions in fresh talks with Washington. Moscow, though, has made fresh breakthroughs with 100,000 troops amassing near Pokrovsk. Well, we do have Peter as things stand, so we can get his thoughts. Peter, just on a human level, take us through what happened on Wednesday night going into Thursday. What was the experience like for you? It was a devastating attack on Kyiv.
Yes, absolutely. It was one of the heaviest attacks of the entire war. As is typical, it was a combined attack, so it was a large number of drones, around 600 drones over Ukraine. Here in Kyiv, it was a few hundred. We also had ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. So it was a long night, very, very loud. A lot of explosions, the air defences working overtime for a period of hours. I mean, it went on probably from around midnight right through till the early morning hours. So it was a sleepless night for most people. And of course, when the dust had settled, we learned of a number of deaths. Unfortunately, a number of children were killed, and around 20 people, I think, at this stage, we believe, were killed in the attack. So it was unfortunately nothing new. I mean, we've seen this many times, but it was certainly a very big attack and a very strong signal from the Russians that they're not looking to de-escalate at all. On the contrary, in fact.
You wrote actually previously an article just over a week ago saying a strong Ukraine is the only realistic security guarantee against Russia. We have it there in front of us. What do these latest attacks make you think? I mean, could NATO's Article 5 come into play at this stage?
Well, we hear a lot of talk about the coalition of the willing, but we don't know what the coalition is willing to do, to put it frankly. And, and in the final analysis, the question we always come back to is, are Ukraine's partners in the West, are its European partners and the Americans, are they prepared to fight against Russia to defend Ukraine? And I think the answer there is a resounding no. I think we've got to be realistic. They're not going to fight Russia on Ukraine's behalf. So we can't realistically talk about NATO Article 5 or collective security. I think the most realistic scenario is perhaps some sort of air support from the West, but fundamentally Ukraine's security will hinge on the strength of the Ukrainian military. So it's really all about the extent to which Ukraine's partners can bolster Ukraine's existing military strength, can add to that, and can increase Ukraine's ability to maintain this defence long term and to have a deterrent factor. Deterrence here really means the ability to strike back against Russia, primarily with long-range weapons that can strike inside Russia and attack Putin's war machine in Russia. So we're talking here really first and foremost about missiles and missile capabilities, which Ukraine doesn't have at this stage and really needs if it's going to deter future invasions. So we're really looking, I think, from a Ukrainian perspective for the West, yes, certainly, any troop deployments would be welcome. Air support is very welcome, but on a fundamental level, it's all going to be about the strength of the Ukrainian military. So it's about bolstering that, giving Ukraine the weapons it needs, giving it a long-term sense of security, that not have this support hinging on political changes in different European capitals or in Washington, and also support for Ukraine's sort of broader military industrial base, so that Ukraine will be able to produce the weapons it needs and to maintain that kind of degree of security.
Peter, thanks so much. Let's talk about that in terms of support. We've had these talks, Ana Navarro, in terms of in Toulon between Germany and France, providing more air support. The United States also promising through intermediaries in Denmark close to $1 billion in missile sales to Ukraine. But is there any sign that Europe is stepping up to the plate?
Look, the situation actually right now is extremely difficult to read. But in the end, at most, neither the United States nor Russia, nor Putin, neither Putin nor Trump are really going into a peace negotiations. A stale situation in Ukraine would help the United States to concentrate their efforts on China and Asia and Pacific area for a while, keeping the situation kind of frozen in the hands of the Europeans. Now, the Europeans, on top of it, the Europeans have to buy the guns from the United States. So if we don't have money in France, in England, in Germany, if we don't have money for the local populations, and then we are giving money to Ukraine, this is going to be very difficult to deal with in domestic terms, first of all. Secondly, of course, we can borrow and help Ukraine and buy the guns, but where is the production? Where in the United States? In Europe, we know that the production so far, it's not going to be able to match the intensity of war in Ukraine just before 1, 2, or 3 years. On top of it, we've seen that the front in Ukraine the Ukrainian front is collapsing, and we see that while talking about peace and so forth, the Russian army is advancing and advancing and advancing. And actually, at this point, we should ask if they are not going into Odessa and lock Ukraine out of any sea issue. So the situation is difficult to read. It can really just go one way or the other any time. Just one split moment, we can find ourselves in war or in a stable situation, or maybe talking about truce and peace.
That is a very precarious situation for Europe. We've heard from Donald Trump. You just saw him in picture there in his Alaska meeting with Russia, saying that there could be other talks on the horizon. Now, Donald Trump doesn't seem to be really convincing in terms of any kind of end to the war. We've heard from Trump on the matter.
I'd like it to stop. I want to get it to stop. And it will not be a world war, but it will be an economic war. And an economic war is going to be bad. And it's going to be bad for Russia, and I don't want that. Now, I have to also see, because not everybody, Zelensky is not exactly innocent either.
Peter, once again, Donald Trump said that the war would end within 24 hours. Now he's calling Zelensky not innocent either. It's just not really confidence resounding across Ukraine, because he also promised to sanction Russia. Those sanctions haven't come without a ceasefire. What kind of confidence is there in the US president at this point in time from Ukraine?
Very little confidence. I think that Trump's position is quite clear. He would like to support Russia if he felt that he could, but he's currently restricted by American public opinion, American political opinion, and also the position of of America's European partners. But he's clearly very, very reluctant to take any steps against Russia and to take measures to try and prevent further Russian aggression. He keeps doing this infamous 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and nothing ever happens. We saw the summit in Alaska. We saw the meeting in Washington. Trump came out and said, okay, we have progress. We're going to have talks between Zelensky and Putin. Russia accepts the need for Western security guarantees. Since then, the Kremlin has come out and says, no, we do not accept the need for Western security guarantees, and we will not meet with Putin will not meet with Zelensky. So there's really been no progress at all. In fact, the opposite. The former demands for a ceasefire have essentially been taken off the table. So there's very little expectation that Trump will be the man to break this deadlock. But on the other hand, he has agreed to sell weapons to the Europeans on Ukraine's behalf. So that's certainly an encouraging sign for Ukraine. And he's not opposed Ukraine's campaign of strikes inside Russia against Putin's oil and gas industry, which is ongoing now. And just in the space of the last few weeks of August, we've seen Ukraine cause a significant harm to Russia's oil and gas industry. Around 20% of their refining capacity has been taken offline from these attacks. And the Americans have not voiced any concerns about that. So this is certainly an encouraging sign and a realistic sign of what we can expect from the Americans, that they will not object to Ukraine striking inside Russia and that they will sell weapons to the Europeans. I think that's about as much as we can realistically expect from the Trump administration. It's certainly a start. Will it be enough? Well, a lot will depend on how much the Europeans are prepared to finance here. And of course, they have a very significant ulterior motive, because Europeans know very well that if Ukraine were to fall, they're next.
On that somber note, I would just like to draw the line under Ukraine for now. Unfortunately, that is where we have to end it on the serious topics. Douglas Herbert, Ana Navarro Pedro, as well as Aysegul Sert. And of course, we had Peter Dickinson over in Kyiv. Just a final word to leave our audience with. Amidst all the chaos and devastation, there has been a moment of good news this week, at least if you are mega pop star Taylor Swift. She's announced her engagement to American football star Travis Kelce, with her Instagram post racking up 34 million views and a record number of reposts on the app. And it just shows you, well, I guess, where the priorities of viewers are in this day and age amidst all the turbulence. So that's where we end of this show, The World This Week. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you for more here on France 24.